Most career-driven women that are trying to lose fat are wasting their time working out and in the gym by doing random circuits, hopping from one machine to the next, doing too much cardio, and generally just following programs that are not directed at all to where they want to go. And yes, these things are burning calories, which is a good thing, but they're still not building the body and metabolism that you need if you want to lose and keep off body fat for a lifetime. And what actually has the best return on invest when it comes to your time and energy is what we're talking about today. And in short, that's going to be lower body strength, improving your posture, your mobility, your muscular balance long term, and actually working out in a way that allows for long-term progression, meaning you're doing things that are actually measurable so you can build from one session to the next. You do use actual programming that allows you to keep on making progress, and also a kind of exercise selection that helps you target what you're actually not so good at so that you can actually progress, because you're not going to progress in areas where you're already good at. You got to focus on your weakest link, because your chain will always only be as strong as its weakest link. So the exercise selection and what you're actually doing in your program is also just so crucial, and all of these areas are really, really important, and that's what we're talking about today. Because the more you can train your muscle really well, the bigger that metabolic return. And the things I mentioned, posture, mobility, muscular balance, are basics so that you can keep on training your muscle and building a metabolism, so to say, over time. So the first focus area that has this big return on your metabolism and helps you lose fat in a sustainable way, as I just said, is your lower body. And when I say lower body, I actually mean full body / lower body, because if we look at the exercises, the compound exercises that train your lower body, it's more or less a full body exercise, meaning squats, deadlifts, even split squats. These kind of things are shown to recruit the most muscle fiber, the most muscles in your body amongst all exercises that are out there. So the muscles that primarily are working when you do these kind of exercises are, of course, your thighs, your glutes, but also your lower back. Depending on what you're doing, also your upper back and even your shoulders can be active throughout these exercises. So it's more or less upper body exercises, but right, primarily your lower body is working. Since those muscles, glutes, thighs, lower back, and so on, are the biggest muscles when it comes to the volume in your body, these have the biggest potential for loading as well. And of course, you can speak from experience, right? Your legs are of course stronger than your arms, because you're walking all day on your feet, right? Using your legs all day for walking. So these have the biggest potential for loading and for using weight. Therefore, it also has the biggest glucose demand. Glucose as in, right, how you're producing energy in your body. And of course, if you're using big muscles, you're going to burn more glucose compared to you using smaller muscles. I think that's quite straightforward as well, meaning you're going to burn more glucose, more energy when you're doing lower body workouts. And therefore, it also has generally the biggest effect on your training adaptation. Of course, you can adapt in your training in different ways. One of those ways is adjusting your work capacity, so burning a lot of glucose and then in the next training session being able to burn more glucose. But also another way to progress is your nervous system, meaning your brain, so to say, stimulating those muscle fibers, those muscles, so that you can create force when you're working out. And if you're using lower body exercises, then of course your brain will recruit more muscle fibers, will recruit and use, so to say, more muscle, because there is more muscle in your lower body. And therefore you're also generally improving your what we call neuromuscular strength, right? The general ability of your body to create tension, to use your muscles. And that's what you're improving more with lower body exercises compared to upper body exercises, because as I said before, there is more muscles working, and therefore also your brain has to recruit more of these what we call muscle fibers. And therefore, generally, right, because of the neuromuscular component, how much glucose you're burning, and generally like how much muscles you're recruiting here, these have the biggest return, right, on investment of your time, and the biggest upside for your body composition, as in building muscle overall and losing body fat, because you're stimulating your metabolism more by using more muscle fibers. And what's also interesting to mention, I think, is that due to your brain and your central nervous system having to be so active when recruiting lower body muscles, We actually also know that just by doing these lower body or full body exercises like squats, deadlifts, split squats, you can still get stronger in your upper body by just doing that because you're recruiting so much muscle. And that's, I think, a really interesting thing to know. And it's like a really good sign for what we call like global strength. And like the best example for an actual good return on invest when it comes to how much time and energy you're spending working out, because you're doing one exercise, but actually your full body literally is getting stronger. So I can't think of anything that would have like a better return on invest. So that's why that lower body part is so important. So the next super crucial concept to lose fat sustainably and make this a once and for all change is actually mobility and posture. And after I walk you through these important concepts, of course, I will give you specific benchmarks and hierarchies and systems that you can use to get there one step at a time, and so that you know what exercises to focus on and to do, so that you have this better return on investment of your time when you're actually working out. So mobility and posture matter so much because if you're limited in your range of motion and you can't fully use your joints, right, then you will be limited in the lifts that you can do, first of all. So you won't be able to do the things that have this great effect on your metabolism in the first place. Also, if you're still doing them, then you will compensate. That can lead to overuse, and actually does very often, to overuse and even injuries. And of course, therefore, because for example, you're doing things not properly and you're not using the full range of motion when doing a back squat, for example, you will just stay weaker. You will progress less because even if you're using big muscles, but if you're just doing the half range of motion, then you're also just burning half the glucose and activating half the muscle that you should actually activate, right? And your joints are designed to be moved through the whole range of motion. That's why they have the range that they have. And therefore, you should also do that, because if you're only always using these partial ranges, this will lead to muscular imbalances, right? Because there's always the same muscles working, and right, then they are pulling on, of course, your muscles pulling on your joints, and therefore this will lead to overuse and injury. So a couple common examples would be poor ankle mobility, actually, right? If your ankle is not able to move all the way, and you're not really able to move your knee to the past your toes, like to the front, then of course you're also not able to access a deep squat, do a split squat, to get on the ground smoothly without using your hand to support yourself, or using a chair, right? So if your ankle mobility is limited, then you won't be able to do full range of motion lower body exercises. Another very common thing is poor hip mobility, right? So if you're not able to fully pull your knee toward your chest, for example, or also to open your legs, and all kinds of other motions, like also the rotation in your hips, then of course also certain lower body exercises you will not be able to access, and also certain day-to-day movements and motions you will not be able to access. Something super crucial, and I think never like onboarded the client in my life that had like sufficient upper body upper back strength, is like a weak upper back, which also a lot of times goes hand in hand with a lack of the ability to open your thoracic spine, or your upper spine, right? So like just a rounded back in simple terms, and also like a weak upper back, because you need like upper back as in the area between your shoulder blades, and that like for I think 90%, especially like women that are working a lot, um, constantly see that, right? Because why would your upper back be strong if you're not actively working it? You need your upper back to do like overhead kind of motions. You need it to pull in that kind of direction, and then right, you're not using that in your day to day. So of course your upper back is weak, and that, as I said, goes hand in hand with poor thoracic extension. That's how we call opening our back, and also unstable shoulders. So whenever we have like a weak upper back, and also poor of that thoracic extension or upper back extension, and the ability to open your upper back, then mostly also shoulders are not in the best condition. And the rotator cuff is a very common example, but generally just having unstable shoulders that don't allow you to move behind your back, to reach overhead, to pull, to push in not just in front of your body, but especially also overhead is also something very, very common. And also in a second, I'll show you how we work towards that and what we do to get rid of that, of course. And as I said, right, this will just prevent you from doing proper lifts, will lead to you compensating, will lead to overuse and injuries. And that's why mobility and posture are a super important category as well. Now, how do you know if you have proper strength, mobility, a good posture, muscular balance? Like, what are the exercises that you should actually be able to access with maybe a certain weight, a certain range of motion, and also how do you get there? And let's start with the lower body part. And the first benchmark that I would want you to achieve is what we call the knees over toes split squat. So actually a regular split squat done with proper form. Nowadays you need to say knees over toes because what you see with most fitness and gym kind of content out there on social media, YouTube, etc., is split squats where you're actually not really moving the knees past the toes. And if you're now watching or listening via audio only, then maybe, right, check your phone real quick, watch the video, right? Watch the video of this episode because I will show here what a proper split squat looks like. So I'm not just describing it, but you can actually also see it. And as I said, the knees over toe split squat essentially looks the following way. You're in a split stance, and then from the anterior leg or the front leg, the knees move past the toes in a way where your calf, your full calf, is fully covered by your thigh, right? So that just means that you're fully flexing your knee, your front knee, your anterior knee, and you're moving your knee as far past the toes as possible while staying upright or vertical with your torso, with your upper body. And that allows your knee, right, to go to the front and therefore your knee to actually work in contrast to what you see out there a lot with split squats that are only focused on growing your glutes, and there's nothing wrong with that, but also you need to be able to have strong knees, otherwise you won't be able to do strength training long term. And that's why doing a proper split squat here and there is also super crucial. So that's an important benchmark. And again, check the video of this episode right now while you're listening, in case you don't know what I'm talking about here and it sounds too complex. So this is a super great benchmark because if you have achieved that, I'm not even talking about a certain weight, right? You can use some dumbbells left and right, but it's just about the range of motion for now. It's not even about accessing a certain weight, but that shows us that you have proper ankle mobility, that you have proper hip mobility, at least when it comes to your glutes, right? You have proper single leg strength and also a certain form of control, because the split squat also is like a certain a balancing exercise to a degree, and some form of knee resilience. So that's why this is such an important benchmark. And if you have this down, then the next benchmarks I'm walking you through will also be way easier to achieve. And the benchmark number 2 will be a full back squat with the barbell on your back, obviously, with your heels down and an upright torso, which is not super easy, right? So this is a major benchmark um, because you essentially get the ability to then also load that back squat, develop strength, and work on your metabolism like crazy, right? So if you get strong at back squats, full range of motion back squats, there is no exercise that will help you, right, increase your metabolic rate more than such an exercise. This is not important because everyone has to do like weightlifting, powerlifting, or use heavy weights, but it actually helps you, right, to improve your resilience, joint resilience. It helps you to improve ankle resilience, knee resilience, hip resilience, but also lower back. Plus, it will help you to increase your metabolic rate, as I said. So this is just like a great benchmark to hit. And also for this one, no specific weight needed. Later on, if you can back squat with 1 time your body weight. So if you're a woman, you weigh 70 kilograms, and then if at some point you get to a point where you can use the barbell, which usually is 20 kilograms, and then 25 on one side, 25 on the other side, and you have like your body weight on the bar, like in general, you're squatting your body weight. That's a good benchmark to hit. That would be a really good strength level. But in the beginning, it's like just about actually being able, with a barbell on your back, right, to stay upright and go all the way down, meaning in the bottom position, your ankles are fully flexed, your knees are fully flexed, your hip is fully flexed, and you're still more or less upright in that back squat. And that's a really good and important benchmark to hit. I have to add though that also anatomy related, not everyone is predisposed for like a full range of motion back squat. So if you're, for example, someone that has really long thighs and a very short torso, very short upper body, then you might not be able to access a deep back squat, regardless of how good your mobility is. So there's exceptions though, right? A lot of, for example, Scandinavian folks or African people have these kind of tendencies, right? Super long thighs and short torsos, and then of course it's more difficult to access an actual deep squat with, as I said, fully flexed joints. And then on the other side, like the opposite examples, with the if you have some Asian genes, then you have like short thighs and a longer torso, then it's going to be super easy for you to access a deep squat. So I'm just saying it's different for everyone. Not everyone has to have like the same squatting mechanic, but generally having this as a benchmark and as a goal is a really good starting point. The next thing is actually an upper body benchmark. So we just talked about the deep squat and the deep back squat and the split squat. So if you have these down lower body wise, you're already ahead of 99% of other women out there, for sure. Next one is an upper body benchmark that works on the right things that are usually limiting I mentioned before, which is the thoracic extension or the opening of your spine, and also the overhead strength. And that's what I call the behind the neck press, or what is called the barbell behind the neck press. And the behind the neck press, and also just like the back squat and the split squat before, is shown here in the video. So if you're just listening and you want to know what the behind the neck press is and you don't know, then just check the video. It's shown while I'm speaking. And essentially what you're doing is you have the barbell resting on your upper back, just like with the back squat, and from there you're pressing overhead until your arms are extended, and then you're lowering down until the bar touches your neck again. And that's just great, like a super great benchmark for thoracic extension, because you essentially are forced to open up your spine when you're pressing with the barbell behind your head or behind your neck. Because if you're using dumbbells, then automatically you will move forward regardless of your mobility, because here you're just stronger than you are here when your thoracic spine is extended. So with dumbbells will not be a good benchmark for that, but the barbell behind the neck press is a really good benchmark for that, for what I call that thoracic extension, but also your shoulder mobility, because obviously you have to rotate your shoulders to externally or to the back so that you can actually access that position. So for, so to say, upper back functioning, overhead mechanics, this is a super crucial benchmark and a super good thing to start with. And the way you can work towards that, for example, is starting with dumbbells, right? You can do like, put like the dumbbell, the workout bench on 45 degrees, overhead press, and then you increase the inclination of the bench further and further until you hit like a 90 degree angle. And when you have like the 90 degree, or you do like an overhead press with dumbbells, then at some point you can also switch to the barbell behind the neck press. So starting with dumbbells, increasing the inclination, and then later on moving to a barbell is like a good way to work towards that. And then another thing for your upper back that is super crucial is the row towards the neck, because as I said before, so many people have a weak upper back, right? And that's something that you can work towards with the behind the neck press as well, but a very targeted way to improve your upper back strength and therefore your upper back mobility and therefore your shoulder resilience and thoracic spine resilience as well, is what we call the row towards the neck. So essentially you're using a cable pull for that. And again, right, I'm showing the video. If you're only listening with audio, video is shown here. You're essentially using a rope, and then you're rowing towards the neck. You go all the way back, right, until you extend your upper back and spine. And this way you can really improve your upper back strength. You can improve that thoracic extension and back mobility, therefore your posture, and also scapular control, which is really crucial, and long-term muscular balance, because if your back is more balanced with the front side of your body and you're not just strong in front of the body, but also when you're pressing overhead or you're pulling behind the neck, then of course you have an improved muscular balance, and that then helps you, right, avoid or reduce the risk of injury and overuse long term. So Generally, what these benchmarks and goals that I just walked you through unlock is improved posture, improved mobility, and so that you can then later on do more complex things that then have a way increased effect on your metabolism. Like I said, for example, the squat is a great example. If you unlock that kind of ankle mobility and hip mobility with the split squat, and then you move towards doing a full back squat, then this will allow you to increase your resting metabolic rate way further. And also things like Romanian deadlifts, once you have like a back squat down, or you have an improved lower back resilience, knee resilience, and so on, and you go into Romanian deadlifts, back extensions, you increase the weight with your squats, you're doing generally lower, heavy lower body work or posterior chain work. Posterior chain, essentially the muscles I mentioned earlier, right? The back part of your thighs, glutes, and lower back. And these things then, right, again, burn more glucose. They demand more from your neuromuscular system and therefore increase your metabolic rate and the amount of calories you burn throughout the day way more, which allows you to not just lose a bit of fat while you're doing that session, but actually long term, because you're essentially building like a metabolic powerhouse, and your body is this kind of powerhouse that just burns so much calories so that, right, you have a way easier time losing body fat and keeping it off over time. Now, before we continue with how specifically this actually improves your metabolism and what this actually means, and also how specifically I would recommend you to structure such a strength training session for more fat loss, go ahead and scroll up, subscribe to this podcast so you're not missing any future episodes, and also give me a rating. That would mean the world to me if you found any of this helpful at least. And so why this matters for your metabolism and how specifically that kind of training improves your metabolism is that if you have more active muscle, which just means that your muscle tone increases, that you're growing more muscle fibers and so on, these are just burning more calories throughout the day. So your muscle tissue needs more energy and burns, so to say, more energy throughout the day. And that itself leads to you burning more calories even while you're sleeping, even while you're resting. Also, if you're working out and you're getting stronger, you're teaching your body to burn more glucose because, as I said before, one of the mechanisms we progress is with our work capacity, and that means we're able to use up more glucose within a training session. So our what we call work capacity increases. And when that happens, and also when you're growing more muscle, then you're essentially able to pull more sugar out of your blood. And whenever you're eating something, pasta, rice, sweets, whatsoever, instead of that increase in blood sugar just accumulating in body fat and being stored in your liver or somewhere else as body fat, this allows you to pull sugar out of your blood and fill up the muscle sugar or muscle glycogen storages with that. And that's one of the mechanisms how this improves blood sugar management, insulin sensitivity, but therefore also has a positive effect on your metabolism again, allows you to burn more fat. So these are one of a couple of the ways how the strength training improves your metabolism. But then also, of course, getting stronger and being able to move more weights leads to you progressing more, leads to you burning more glucose. So it also has this kind of accumulating effect over time. You can then also train at a higher quality if you have a bigger range of motion. If you're doing like a larger movement in your strength training, you're also burning more energy. You're using more energy for that same movement. You're also recovering better if you have more muscle, right? In case at some point you have an injury, for example, you're recovering better. And again, it's just health-wise, just from a health perspective, not just from a fat loss perspective, really important, right, to grow and keep muscle. Now, time-wise and how specifically I would structure such a strength training session. I recommend for most busy women that I work with 2 to 3 strength training sessions per week of 30 to 40 minutes maximum. Not necessarily more than that. Of course, if you're recovering well, you're sleeping very well, and you're taking enough rest, then you can also move that to 45 to 60 minutes, but more than that, I would never really do. And if you're really busy, right, you have like a busy career, you have a family to take care of, 30 to 40 minutes are plenty, and more than that I wouldn't do. That is usually far better than 5 random sessions where you're kind of exhausted always, but you're not building from one session to the next, because these kind of short sessions and doing, for example, 5 to 6 exercises maximum for your upper body, or 5 to 6 exercises maximum for your lower body, that actually allows you to build up from session to session. You can note your repetitions and weights, and then next time you're getting stronger, you're building up from there. So trying to do everything, doing the gym classes, doing some random workouts, this all really doesn't develop that kind of metabolism I talked about before. And what's really important, and right, the structure I just recommended with the 30 to 40 minutes, is that it stays measurable. You actually write down the weights, write down the repetitions, and next time you build up from there. You increase one of these. That you actually use programming, which essentially means you're doing, let's say, 4 exercises, even the ones that I recommended today, split squat, back squat, upper back, row. Right? Today we're not diving into like specifically like the details of programming, but let's say you're doing these 4 exercises, and then that allows you to next time, right, build up. You're doing 8 repetitions for all these, like 3 rounds of 8 repetitions for every single exercise, and next time you're increasing the weight. And it's as easy as that. And that's already like the programming. And when you're not able to progress anymore, then you're just switching the program. You're switching the exercises you're doing, and therefore working towards the same goal, but actually making sure that you can keep on progressing, because of course with anything, at some point you're not developing anymore, you're stagnating, and that's why we need that programming to make sure that you can keep on progress. One extra category of training that we're not diving into today, but actually I have a full episode on that, so if you scroll down, the first of my podcast episodes covers that, how to do it specifically. It's about interval training, and it takes you 20 minutes and allows you to boost fat loss also in a sustainable and lasting way, similar to strength training. Also something that I highly recommend. We're not covering this today though. So in essence, if you want the best return on investment of your time and energy from your training, focus on your upper back, focus on your shoulders, focus on your hip mobility and ankle mobility by doing the squat patterns, right? That allows you to build knee resilience, hip and ankle resilience, squat patterns as in split squat and barbell back squat, because those are the things that let you build that kind of strength that then build a metabolism that allows you to lose and keep off fat easily over time. And again, if you found any of this helpful, it would mean the world to me if you scrolled up, subscribed, and gave me a rating.